Hello, Banjo Jed here, or Kevin Wiley, and I would like to begin with this beginner series to have a look at your banjo to make sure it's playable, to make it as easy to play as possible and to sound good. So we're going to take a tape measure, and we're going to look at this plastic part here. It's called the nut, where the strings exit the headstock, and we're going to measure from there with this tape measure. Push it up against the nut, just up against it there. And we're going to count down to the 12th fret. And in this case, I look at mine, and you can go and count the number of steps or frets until you get to the 12th. And right in the middle of that 12th fret, I get a measurement of 13 and an eighth. So I jot that down for future reference. Then I take my tape measure and I go from the 12th fret right in the center of it, of that fret. I take tape measure and I go to the bridge, where the bridge is sitting on the banjo head here, and I measure. It should be 13 and an eighth as well, because we want the bridge to be lined up so that it's completely 12th fret is right dead center of the strings that are vibrating. This is a 26¼ inch scale. Banjos come in different scales. And so all you do is measure from your nut to your 12th fret, multiply by 2, and you'll figure out exactly what scale banjo you have. So that needs to be set up. And once you get that bridge nice and perpendicular and straight on the banjo head, then you can take a pencil and just put a little line on the inside there, so that in the future, if you change your strings or the bridge moves around a bit, you can double check to make sure it's all set up properly. It will not play very well in tune if it's not exactly where it's supposed to be. Easy enough to do. Anyone with a tape measure should be able to figure that out. Okay, next thing, we're going to check our neck straightness. And if your banjo is brand new, you probably don't have any issues, but you never know. And what we can do is we can look down the fretboard and check an eyeball and see if there are any frets that are sticking up, or if there are irregularities. It should look like a nice straight line where you're looking at the frets. And if you have issues with that, and you've tried to play and are having trouble, it might need to have the strings removed by a luthier, have them filed down properly and set up, and you can take it to a luthier or someone who knows how to do that kind of work, can do that quite easily. But it's a delicate process. These are some things that make your banjo not sound so good. And then, of course, we have some other issues. We have in the back of our banjo, here's another one, another banjo. You'll see these are truss rods, and those can be adjusted for the angle of your neck to make sure that the strings aren't too high off the neck. Now you notice I also put a tea towel or a small towel behind there to mute it, so that I can actually practice this banjo with people sleeping in the house, and they'll never know I'm playing, and I can still practice. And so that's what I recommend to you who have other folks in the house and are bothered by the sound. A couple other things we should look at is string height. If you go to the 12th fret again, you'll know where that is because you've already measured it. You can take a ruler or some measuring device, and you can eyeball that, and at the 12th fret, mine's about a 1/16 of an inch, and that's probably a good rule of thumb. It might be plus or minus a 32nd of an inch, but if it's more than a 1/16, too much more than a 1/16 of an inch off the 12th fret, it will be difficult for you to play the notes up the neck. So these are just simple measuring techniques that almost anyone can do. Okay, what else? We have our bridge here. Now I have a 5/8 measurement. 5/8 is how high my bridge is. You can buy a 1/2 inch, and you can buy 5/8 or 3/4 bridge. And if you're having trouble with playing with picks and you're always hitting the head, you might realize, oh, I'm playing with a 1/2 inch. and buy yourself a 5/8 bridge. But then now you have to go and into the truss rods in the back, and then you're going to have to change that angle. And a banjo is very technically easy to manipulate and to move around, to adjust it. And it's really important so that you can get the most playability out of your instrument. Even a cheap instrument can be set up really, really well, and somebody knows how to play it can make it sing. Now, there's a couple other things, of course. There is a truss rod cover on most banjos right here, made of plastic or perloid or whatever, and that can be removed. An Allen key can be inserted in there to adjust what they call the truss rod that runs all the way down the neck, built inside of it. But that should be done by a proper luthier or someone who really knows what they're doing. The strings have to be removed, and it takes a couple days sometimes to set it up. And the reason why you need to do that is if you look down your neck and you see it's really, really bowed like this in the middle, then you might realize, okay, that's part of the reason why you have a difficult time playing it, and that can be set up to improve playability. Again, this is some of the simple things you can do. Okay, also your 5th string tuner peg. Some people on a basic banjo, some of them will come just with a very plain 5th string tuning peg, and it's called a friction fit, and they are notorious for slipping, and it will drive you crazy by constantly having to tune it. Now you can upgrade to a machined or geared 5th string peg. You can buy these and have a luthier or someone install that, but it's a bit of a delicate process. The hole has to be reshaped properly and properly inserted in there. But you can upgrade this. While we're on the 5th string as well, if it's buzzing on the 5th string, and you're having trouble with that, especially at the beginning here, or when you play it open, 5th string open, there's this thing called a pip. It's a tiny little screw. Sometimes banjos will come with them, they're plastic, and then over time they eventually break, and then the string ends up resting on the 5th string. So you can have someone drill a tiny, tiny, tiny little hole and insert a regular wood screw, tiny one that will fit in there, slot, so that the screw will lift and raise the 5th string just above that 5th string fret. These are the frets. I should tell you that too for beginners. Fret 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. At the 5th fret, that's where this string, 5th string, comes out. And just behind there is a wood screw that you can have updated if in the event that you need to. That's a good improvement. If there's plastic, you might want to just do that in the future at some point. Also, as we're talking about nuts, most of them are made of plastic. The good ones are made of bone, like cow bone or some other type of thing. And there's some newer material on the market as well, a modern replacement. It's not plastic, it's harder. You can buy blanks at the music store or online, and if you are handy with tools, you can cut yourself and shape one identical to the plastic one you have, and that will improve the ringing of your banjo as well. And one thing you want to do and check is if you have a beginner banjo and it's difficult for you to do some of the chords in this position, which you call first position, down at the 1st fret, it might be because the strings are too high and the grooves in the nut need to be adjusted. Now it can be done with a very fine saw, and like a coping saw, very fine blade saw, and you can file that down or saw that down slowly as you with the strings off, you make an adjustment, figure out what you need, and that can be machined or done properly so that now it's a lot easier to play in that position. The purpose, of course, of the nut is to raise the strings high enough so that they don't buzz on the frets. So it has to be set up in the proper spot. Okay, let's talk about buzzing for a second. Some of the frets may wear out if you play it, or if you've got a used banjo and somebody's really loved it and played it. There'll be deep grooves, so just check some of the frets, especially in these first 4 or 5 frets. They get the most abuse, and those frets can be replaced. I've had to do it on my banjo. I just replaced the first 3 or 4 and filed them down to suit, and everything's good to go again. So those are some things you want to look for buzzing anywhere when you're playing it. And of course, that can be set up by someone who knows how to do that if you're having trouble. You will work harder at trying to play a banjo that's not set up properly. And as a beginner, you need all the advantage you can get. Plus, why not set it up and then you've got yourself a playing banjo. A couple other things to think about. Tuners come in various models, and you can even download an app on your phone and tune it. I do that with many instruments, though I have purchased a couple of the electronic tuners. And there's a little arrow that goes in the center, and you'll see it says A440, which means it's in concert pitch. So if you're playing with a band or a group and everybody's tuned to concert pitch or the proper pitch, then we're all in tune and away we go. A440, of course, stands for the A below middle C on the piano. That's exactly 440 hertz, if you didn't know that. So you want it set for A440 or 440 if it says that on there. And you might see a CH stands for chromatic. Chromatic is good, just means it just covers every note. There's various tuners for ukuleles that are set up special for that. Guitar as well. So you're going to have to practice with your tuning and with your ear to get exactly where you want it to be on. Since I'm looking at my 5th string capo here, this is a little add-on feature, and you have to put this on here if you are ever intending to put a capo on your instrument so that you can play in different keys with guitar players. Say you'll need to retune it, and instead of turning this way up and breaking the string, which is probably what's going to happen, you can affix one of these. Now there's also some other methods. So you can look online for banjo 5th string capos, and I've seen some very slick little things that are non-destructive. You don't drill any holes in the neck. You just sit it underneath the string and it just rests there. As long as you don't lose it, it's just a tiny little piece of metal designed and formed and shaped for that purpose. So that's what that's about. You don't need one of these to get started. The other thing is, when you do have these tuning pegs and you're having difficulty tuning them, you may find that you have to take a screwdriver and carefully, and I emphasize carefully, tighten that screw on the peg, and you'll find that depending on the style of machine heads that you have, there'll be screws in the ends of these as well. And they may or may not come loose, and then you'll have a tough time tuning your banjo. It always seems to slip flat, and that's the reason. Tighten those screws carefully, just enough to hold it. If you over tighten it, you will crack the plastic tuner pegs and be looking at replacing them, which could be costly if you can even find them. Okay, also, if you have any machine heads that the gears are showing, where it looks like a little worm gear there, you can put a drop of oil in each one once in a blue moon, and like 3-in-1 machine oil, whatever. WD-40 is okay. WD-40 is not really designed for that type of thing. It can be used, but a little bit of oil on the machine head and then wipe off the excess will allow you to be able to tune it a lot easier, and you'll find it'll save you a lot of frustration. Those are a few tips for that. If you decide that you have issues then that are beyond you, make sure you find someone to help you out with that. All right. This kind of ends the setup portion. I can't think of anything else at this point. The other thing might be that if you have trouble, always seem like your banjo doesn't play properly, it doesn't tune properly, and it's not your hand, it's not your left hand playing chords. It just seems to be it's playing out of tune all the time. If your strings get older and there's rust on the strings, no matter what you do, they will never be able to tune very well. So then you're time for new strings. And you can buy light You can buy medium or heavy strings. Often we go with a standard light set. Um, if you're a little more heavy playing and you're trying to get the volume, you might go for something a bit heavier. Ask the music store where you purchase them what they recommend. This ends the introductory beginner lesson for today, and it's just covering setting up your banjo so that you can make the rest of it very easy to play. Any questions, I'm always ready to answer. So that's it. See you for the part 2.